Hey there, my name is Alex, and today I'm going to be walking you through my photo safari setup. Let's get into it. Alright, first let's talk cameras. There's a few different things you want to take into consideration when you're trying to figure out what camera body you're going to bring on your trip with you. The number one technical important thing is how fast can your camera shoot? How many frames per second? Wildlife moves pretty unpredictably, and you want to be able to capture a ton of photos in succession, because those micro adjustments that animal heads move or the position or pose that they're in make a huge difference in how your photos come out. So you want to be able to have a ton of options. You want to be able to just hold down your shutter, fire off 25 photos, and then be able to go, okay, this one's great, this one sucks, boom, that one's perfect. The second thing you want to take into consideration is how weather resistant the camera is. There is a lot of dust that comes up off of the planes whenever you're on safari, and it does get in the vehicle. So you want to make sure that your camera has some level of dust resistance. It's okay if it doesn't. You're just gonna have to be extra careful to, throughout the day, consistently wipe down your camera, because you don't want any dust getting inside of your lens or in your sensor and ruining your camera body for the trip. The last thing to take into consideration with your camera body is just getting super comfortable with it. Don't have the first time that you use the camera be when you end up on that trip. You need to be super comfortable with your camera so you know how to adjust all the settings, where all the buttons are. You want all of that to be drilled in and muscle memory, because otherwise you're just gonna end up missing shots. Think of every single time that you pick up your camera leading up to when you go on this trip to be an investment on how fast you're going to be able to shoot when you're sitting inside of the safari vehicle. So the more time, the faster you're going to shoot, the better photos you're going to get. All right, now let's talk storage. If your camera body can hold 2 memory cards, I'd strongly suggest doing so. Going on safari is a once in a lifetime experience for a lot of people, and this may include you as well. So you want to make sure that you don't lose these photos. They're very important. So if you can put 2 memory cards into your camera body, write to 2 cards at all times. I also would highly suggest the more storage, the better. So I brought probably around 300 to 400 gigs worth of memory cards with me when I went on safari. So that way I never had to delete anything. I could consistently, once I finished one card, I would pop it out, put in the next one. The faster the memory card, the better. Just like with how fast can your camera shoot, it can only shoot so fast as your memory card can also write. So if you're shooting in RAW, you're gonna be writing really big files to your memory card. You need a card that can shoot fast. A good rule of thumb is to shoot for a card that's anywhere between 90 and 150 megabytes a second. SD cards are pretty cheap nowadays, and trust me, the speed, again, will pay off. All right, we have our camera body, we have our storage. What lens are we gonna shoot this with? Now, the first thing I would take into consideration is renting or buying a lens. If you only intend to use this lens for this trip, I would strongly recommend looking into renting. Renting can be a really great option because you save a lot of money without having to buy a lens, and it opens you up to a larger variety of lenses. And also, when you rent, you can often get insurance so that lens is protected while you travel. For me, I knew I wanted to get more serious about wildlife photography, so I ended up buying a lens. The lens I went with was the Sigma 150 to 600. It is a big boy. Let's see how long it gets here. I went with a zoom lens over a prime lens because I wanted to be able to shoot things at a wider variety of distances. So I wanted to be able to shoot an elephant that was 3 meters away, but also be able to capture a cheetah that was maybe 50 meters away. So a zoom lens allowed me to do that. This one is f5 to 6.3. When you're out shooting on safari, light is pretty abundant, so you don't really have to worry about having a super low aperture. And since these focal lengths are so long, you're getting a ton of compression whenever you're zooming in. And so you don't really need that depth of field as much because you're kind of getting a similar effect through the compression of the image. As far as what focal length I would maybe suggest or recommend, I would maybe go somewhere in the 150 to 400 range. That was where most of my images were shot. A lot of the shots that were further away, I was really grateful for having those longer focal lengths, but the majority of my images were somewhere in the 200 to 400 range. So that's lenses. So with a big camera body and a big lens, how do you keep it all stable when you're sitting in this little safari vehicle? You can't really use a tripod, and monopods are kind of tricky because they don't really have good grip. I think I came up with a really kind of the perfect solution, which is a monopod with 3 feet. Basically all it is a monopod with this ball at the base that then has 3 feet on it. And what that means is that it kind of is almost freestanding, and it takes a bit of the weight off of you. So when you're inside of the car and you've got your lens mounted to it, you could kind of wield it around and move it, and it's a lot better at holding an angle. So if you're trying to lean a certain direction to get a certain image, it's a lot easier to do that, and it's a lot more supportive. This particular one, it's a long boy. It gets out there. So you're never gonna have it this long inside of a safari vehicle, but if you ever have a need for that. One time the cinema pod came in super clutch is a lot of wildlife photography requires a lot of patience. There was a time when we saw a leopard whose head was just sticking out of this cave, and we knew it was probably going to leave eventually. And so we posted up, and because I had this super stable cinema pod, I was able to get my entire camera shot set up from inside the vehicle, all cramped up, and have my shot perfectly ready. And it was a lot easier to keep my camera in place because I could keep my eye to this, so that the moment that leopard dropped down, I was able to shoot the photos. So that's pretty much my setup. Canon 5D Mark IV, ton of really fast memory cards, and the Sigma 150 to 600 contemporary f5 to 6.3. All mounted onto this Manfrotto cinema pod that kept everything nice and stable, which allowed me to get some really awesome shots. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you dropped a like and subscribed if you felt so inclined. If you have any questions about anything I talked about or want me to dive deeper into something in a future video, drop a comment as well, and I'd be more than happy to. If you're looking to check out some of the photos I shot on this safari or photos I'm shooting more recently, you can go over to Instagram, and my username is @AlexLostack. I post pretty much daily over there. And if you're looking for adventure and travel inspiration in your email inbox every week, head on over to loststackphotography.com/cove and sign up for my newsletter, Vagabond Cove. I send out editions of it every Tuesday. Even if you don't do any of that, I appreciate you watching this far in the video, and I will see you in the next one.